Good evening, dear past presidents, council members, special invitees, family members of Professor R.H. Paul, staff members. You all are welcome to Professor R.H. Paul Memorial Lecture today, which is conducted online as well as in person. To welcome the presidential procession, can you kindly rise? To start the event, I kindly invite following dignitaries to light the oil lamp. Engineer K.P. Ayu Dharmapala, President IESL. Two senior most past presidents of the IESL. Engineer Vijitha Herath, Chairman CEB. Engineer Mrs. Kumuduni Herath, General Manager CEB. Two representative members of the late Professor R.H. Paul's family, Mrs. S. Appathurei, Mr. ADDI Appathurei. Engineer M.R. Ranatunga, Chairman of Electrical, Electronic and Telecommunication Engineering Sectional Committee. I would have missed our speaker today, Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya. So as my name. Thank you very much. Please remain standing. Now I cordially invite President Engineer K.P. Ayu Dharmapala to garland the photograph of Professor R.H. Paul. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Now I invite following three dignitaries to come to the stage. President, our speaker today, Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya, and Engineer M.R. Ranatunga, the Sectional Committee Chairman. Please come to the stage, President. I think there's a video to be played for our sponsors.
Power fuels the aspirations of a nation. For over 8 decades, DMO has been touching the lives of Sri Lankans multiple times a day, providing extraordinary solutions to drive the nation forward. Power makes life convenient by paving way for innovation and creativity, allowing people to reach new heights every day. DMO has partnered with world-class brands such as Siemens, Trafo Electro, Kingsmill, Phelps Dodge, and D-Hybrid to provide innovative technologies in power generation, transmission and distribution, renewable energy, low and medium voltage installations, control and protection, services and maintenance. DMO's recently secured Package 4 and 5, funded by JICA and ADB, makes it the company with the most number of ongoing power projects, from being the turnkey contractor of Habarana, Sri Lanka's largest grid substation, to the electrical balance of plant contractor of Mana 100 megawatt wind power project. These projects of national importance will transform the future of Sri Lanka. By building power stations and grid substations, DEMO has transformed the power landscape of Sri Lanka to the next level, making it more reliable, stable, and energy efficient. Providing clean and renewable energy to the national grid by undertaking various wind and solar power projects has been another initiative of DEMO. DEMO also provides solutions for international utility, industrial and private sector clients in Maldives, Uganda and Myanmar, taking our expertise beyond our borders. DEMO also provides Sri Lanka's major development projects with total electrical solutions including lighting, medium, low and extra low voltage solutions, and electrical panel building, thus further establishing DEMO as a versatile electrical partner to the utility, industrial and private sector to provide the best end-to-end solutions. DEMO has partnered with the German hybrid energy specialist D-Hybrid to provide microgrid solutions with renewable power generation and battery storage, which will be the next era of power generation and distribution. DEMO will continue to redefine the power sector of Sri Lanka in decades to come, fueling dreams and aspirations of all our stakeholders.
I have heard that more than 500 members have already registered for this event, and also I think it is being telecast online live. To start the event, to deliver the welcome speech, now I cordially invite the President of the IESL, Engineer K.P. Ayu Dharmapala. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. When I was asked to deliver this Professor R.H. Paul Memorial Lecture, which is normally organized by the Electrical, Electronics and Telecommunication Sectional Committee of the Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka annually, a statement made by one famous Dutch artist came into my mind. He stated that the beginning is perhaps more difficult than anything else, but keep heart, it will turn out all right. When we take a closer look at the roots of the engineering education in Sri Lanka, it has taken quite a challenging path to be where are we to be now. In this journey, there have been many engineering giants whom we can consider as pillars of Sri Lankan engineering education. Among those, we can consider some memorable persons. Today we commemorate such a great character whom we cannot forget, and known as the father of electrical engineering education in Sri Lanka, who is none other than one of our past presidents, Engineer Professor R.H. Paul. It is my pleasure to welcome all participants here today for the Engineer Professor R.H. Paul Memorial Oration. First, I start with our resource person today, Dr. Engineer Tilak Siyambalapitiya. Engineer M.R. Ranatunga, Chairman, Electrical, Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering Sectional Committee. Engineer Neil Abesekara, Executive Secretary, Chief Executive Officer of the Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka. Family members and relatives of the late Engineer Professor R.H. Paul, past presidents, council members, members of the IESL, other invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Robert Hoisington Paul was born in 1904, 9th of February, and had his early education at the Anglo-Chinese School in Singapore, and later he joined St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia. He passed the junior and senior Cambridge examinations and the London matriculation examinations with first class division, and won a scholarship to the University College, Colombo, the forerunner of the University of Ceylon. He was an extraordinary bright student who received his BSc General degree from University of London with first class honours through the University College, Colombo at the age of 20. He was awarded the Kumaraswamy Physics Prize and the Ceylon Government Engineering Scholarship for studies in the United Kingdom. He entered Trinity College, Cambridge, and in 1928 obtained the Mechanical Sciences Tripos with first class honours. He was the first Sri Lankan to achieve this distinction. On his return to Sri Lanka in 1930, he was appointed as a lecturer at the Ceylon Technical College, Colombo, the only institution providing engineering courses at that time. The development of the higher level electrical engineering courses and the laboratory facilities at the college were largely due to his efforts. No doubt, much credit for the eventual recognition of the college in 1942 by the University of London to prepare students for its BSc Engineering external degree should go to him. He was then appointed its first Professor of Electrical Engineering, and from 1944 to 1949 held the post of Director of the College. When the University of Ceylon established the Faculty of Engineering in 1950, Professor Paul was a natural choice as its first Professor of Electrical Engineering. He held this position until his retirement in 1968. His natural interest in upholding status of engineering profession in the country and all his efforts in realizing the same was well recognized and adored when the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka elected him as the president in 1968. He was a fellow of the Institution of Electrical Engineers London and also the overseas representative in Sri Lanka of this institution from 1964 to 1978, the first Sri Lankan to hold this position. He passed away on 3rd July 1978 at the age of 74, when the University of Peradeniya began holding its convocation after a lapse of 10 years. The degree of Doctor of Science was conferred on him in 1980. A man of great abilities, initiatives and drives, Professor Paul has made a lasting impact in the development of electrical engineering education in Sri Lanka. IESL being the premier professional body of engineers in Sri Lanka, so grateful to Professor Paul by way of organizing this oration on his 117th birthday. I will conclude my speech with the following quote: "No person in this world has been rewarded for what he has received, but he is always honored for what he has given to the society at large." Finally, once again, with a warm welcome, I wish to thank you all for being here with us today to grace this important occasion. Thank you very much.
Professor R.H. Paul is known as the father of electrical engineering education in Sri Lanka for his vital role in the history of development of engineering education in the country. Professor R.H. Paul was born on 9th of February 1904, and he was an extraordinarily brilliant student who received his bachelor's degree from University of London with first-class honours through the University College Colombo at the age of 20. In 1928, Professor Paul had become the very first Sri Lankan who joined the University of Cambridge and obtained mechanical sciences tripos with first-class honours. He joined the Ceylon Technical College Colombo as a lecturer, which was the only institution offered courses in engineering in the country at that time. In 1942, University of London recognized the Ceylon Technical College as an institution which prepares students to its prestigious bachelor's engineering degree programs. In 1950, University of Ceylon established its Faculty of Engineering, and Professor Paul was one of the founder members. And also, he was the first professor for electrical engineering until his retirement in 1968. His encouragement and effort led the status of the engineering profession in Sri Lanka to a golden path. The Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, who had recognized the amazing capability of Professor Paul, elected him as the president in 1968. Professor Paul engaged his life to build an eminent profession of electrical engineering in Sri Lanka, and he sacrificed all the golden opportunities to guide his own people of his motherland for a remarkable profession of electrical engineering.
Let me introduce our guest speaker today. This is a very short introduction, unlike the ones what we had those days. Probably everyone knows him. That might be the reason. Engineer Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya graduated from University of Morocco in 1982 and earned his PhD in electric power engineering from University of Cambridge in 1988. He worked at Ceylon Electricity Board until 1994 and at Saudi Electric Company until 1998, leading the power generation planning teams in each utility. Since 1999, he works as a consultant in the electric utility industry in Sri Lanka, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He's a visiting lecturer at University of Moratuwa and Jaffna as well. Dear Dr. Siyambalapitiya, you are welcome. You are cordially invited to deliver this.
Thank you very much. The President, Executive Secretary, Chairman of the Electrical and Electronics Sectional Committee, Mr. and Mrs. Eddie Appadore, members of the family of the late engineer Professor R.H. Paul, past presidents, officials, ladies and gentlemen. I never knew Professor Paul. I guess I am 60 years his junior. If he was living, perhaps he would have recognized my tie, because both of us have been to the same university. But I share with him the desire to train the youth in the correct manner in planning, designing, and operating an electrical power system. That's the common thread that binds me and the concepts and what I have heard of late Professor Paul, dubbed as the father of electrical engineering education in Sri Lanka. I've read that he is an institution builder. And we are lacking such people today who will build institutions, who will respect institutions, and who will strengthen institutions. Because what is important are not the individuals, but the institutions. So having said that, let me move on to the topic assigned to me, the changing structure of the electricity industry. And the subtopic I selected was how Sri Lanka can be similar, but will also be different to other countries. For the benefit of our online audience, I will speak from here without moving around quite a lot. So let me move on with a story. On 17th August 2020, there was a national blackout. Most of you are gradually forgetting it, but I am sure the CEB hierarchy has not forgotten it. I have not forgotten. Professor Paul, if he was living, he would have been the saddest. What happened? As we electrical engineers say, something unexpected happened in the grid, and the frequency increased and again dropped out. The curve on the screen summarizes it all, and on the way, certain power plants tripped. In less than 2 seconds, it was all over. No time for human intervention. 2 seconds. Total blackout. And we all know that the restoration took more than 6 hours. And if Professor Paul was living, he would have said, look, this is a textbook case. And we have seen these situations only in textbooks. They don't happen in real life. It's a 3-phase to ground short circuit for us electrical engineers. But the problem is that we do not have a textbook power system. If we had a textbook power system, it would have withstood a textbook fault. So I start by saying that an electric power system should be resilient. Now, what do we mean by resilience? It has to be robust and flexible. There should be redundancy. It should be smart. And recovery procedures should be very well documented and rehearsed. A feature of an electric power system is its ability to be in dynamic equilibrium. I have not listened to Professor Paul, but I have listened to engineers who have been taught by Professor Paul. So, the generation of electricity should match the customer demand plus the network losses at all times. Generation should be equal to demand and the losses. But I put in blue here, exactly or approximately match. exactly or approximately match. Because every time you switch on a light, obviously an additional amount of water or fuel cannot be immediately admitted to the power plants. There is a time delay, typically 5 seconds. But when you switch on a light, you do not have to wait for 5 seconds. It comes up immediately. So where does that extra energy come from? I leave it for you to think about. I have to say that Sri Lanka's power system is weak. And even a minor disturbance causes excursions and frequency excursions and load shedding, which we customers have to pass off as some unexpected interruption or weather-related event. The traditional approach is to strengthen the system with high inertia generators, which are larger, faster, and with more spinning reserve. Power plants that are rotating but not delivering their full output of electricity, so that when there is a shortage, they will come up and do the needful. Of course, on this front, I would say Sri Lanka missed the bus. When the rest of the world were building larger, stronger, faster generators, developing their strong power plants, Sri Lanka stuck to hydropower development. Of course, for all the good reasons, and ended up with a power system weaker than any other comparable country. While Sri Lankan engineers are worried and concerned and always talking about what happens if the largest generator trips in the system, you do not even find that covered in textbooks anymore, because all other countries have overcome those challenges. Our grid is small, and on top of it, we have not adequately strengthened the grid. Resilience also means redundancy, additional power plants, additional transmission lines, distribution investments. Smartness, which is the third feature of a resilient power system, we are significantly further away and requires more specific planning and implementation. Of course, the smart network requires smart professionals to plan and implement it, and we also need smart customers who are willing to pay for that smart system. We'll come to that more and talk more about customers. I would always say that an electric power system has to be engineered. It's not a case where anything goes. As an example, I selected a picture from India on the left-hand side. I hope you realize that this picture cannot be in Sri Lanka, the left-hand side. And the picture on the right-hand side is a distribution system you find in Sri Lanka, most likely built by an institution led by a student of Professor Paul. I was so privileged to have been working with students of Professor Paul, who once led CEB and subsequently LECO, established transformer factories, gave leadership to renewable energy development. So therefore, a power system has to be engineered. If we say anything goes, you may end up with what you have on the left-hand side, or even worse. And what we see on the right-hand side is an engineered system, a well-designed pole, a neatly constructed, it's vertical, it's not slanting, and good quality material. So therefore, engineers of the yesteryear, who are now in retirement, were so uncompromising about the quality. They engineered the system. Let's move on. I took some data on reliability of the network. Resilience means a reliable system. And I say, read with caution owing to varying definitions. And when I looked at a cross-section of countries who are reporting the number of hours in a year in which customers will not have electricity or have not had electricity, as you see here, Sri Lanka has the largest number. That's why I said, please be cautious, because the definitions vary. In fact, I found that Sri Lanka is very honestly reporting the figures. Sri Lanka is counting all the trippings that are more than 1 minute. And in a recent study, I examined why Indonesia is reporting figures very low. 15 hours, 18 hours per year, to realize that they are reporting outages more than 5 minutes. So any tripping up to 5 minutes is not included. Any tripping owing to a weather-related event or a cyclone or floods is not included. So what we need to compare is not against countries against each other, but whether we are improving on our own figure. That does not seem to be happening, at least when we consider LECO. That indicates that the LECO network is aging. LECO network needs replacement. CB has started reporting in 2019, so we have to see how the figures developed. Is reliability a priority? In 2016, Sri Lanka introduced power quality regulations. And the regulations were gazetted, and they are strong, descriptive, and very well quantified. So the document is very nice. Yet since 2016, there has been no progress made to abide by the regulations. By now, distributors CEB and LECO would have been rewarded for good reliability, and of course the opposite of that is also true, would have been penalized for poor reliability. But then, reliability comes at a price. Customers should be willing to pay the price. So this is where Sri Lanka is different. My theme today is Sri Lanka is similar, but Sri Lanka is different. So in Sri Lanka, people want a higher reliability, but it looks like they are not willing to pay for it. However, Sri Lanka's electricity supply system performs similar or better than other countries on many other fronts. We are concerned about the reducing reliability, but on other fronts, performance is good. The losses in the network are declining. When many Indian electricity utilities are struggling to bring the losses below 20%, Sri Lanka has already reached 8.4% of network losses. Thanks to the uncompromising attitude taken by the engineers in the past and the present in network design, construction, monitoring, metering, and policing. In many other countries, one could steal electricity and get away with it. Probably in Sri Lanka, that's one of the most difficult offenses that you can get off if you are caught. Of course, there is a 7.5% target for 2020, and it is the time to think of a target for 2025 as well. So I would propose a target of 7% of network losses for the whole country, which has to be jointly achieved by our distributors, CEB and LECO, and the transmission network of CEB. Targets are good, and targets should be examined properly and understood and achieved. So as you see here in 2019, Sri Lanka missed the target a little bit by 0.2%. In fact, we should now be measuring the losses in percentage terms into 2 decimal points, because when you tighten your target little by little, then your resolution, your calculations, your measurements should be more accurate. This shows the distribution of losses, how each entity loses electricity in their network. We should not be congratulating LECO, because LECO is privileged to have a urban distribution network. But LECO started off with a loss level of about 25% when LECO was set up in 1985. So starting at 25%, LECO, the most recent figure for 2019, which is not reported here, is 4%. At 4%, we are almost there, but still not good. If you do the calculations, probably the target figure should be 3.2%. And that's all energy of value that is lost. Not everything is bad about the Sri Lanka power system. The daily load profile is improving. It's changing for the better. What you see is a normalized curve. Professor Paul would have said that this is in per unit terms. When electrical engineers have large numbers to be used in a calculation, we normalize them. We say the largest value is 1.0 and then work with unit values. But coming back to this profile, what it indicates is that the daytime consumption is increasing with respect to the night. But the consumption is increasing all the time. The annual load factor is increasing, which means the asset utilization is getting better. Another feature which is common to not only to Sri Lanka but to all developing countries is that our sales growth rates are higher. To our international audience, if you examine the electricity consumption growth rate in your respective countries, be it in Europe, North America, Australia or Japan, electricity sales does not grow. Even if it grows, it's slightly positive, maybe 0.5%, 1% per year. Or in some cases, it may be slightly negative as well. Energy efficiency, structural change in the economy causes energy consumption to actually reduce. Here in Sri Lanka, we are still growing. Even in a year of low economic growth, we see at least a 4% increase in electricity sales, except for 2020, of course. It was an abnormal year. 2021 also could be similar. So therefore, the problems facing the power system in our country have to be managed even better than they are managed in developed countries. Because we are struggling to meet a fast growing demand, they are struggling to maintain a system that has already grown, and their challenge, as you guess, is to increase the share of renewables. And our challenge is both to meet the fast growing demand and increase the share of renewables. If you look at the larger economies in Asia, India, China, Bangladesh and Indonesia particularly, they continue to build major power plants. While the media attention is on renewable energy, in fact they are doing both, particularly China and India. Of course, Sri Lanka has not built anything significant to establish the base of the power system. Of course, there is a new thinking that there is nothing called base load power generation. Whatever terminology we use, there must be a resource and equipment to use that resource which is reliable, which is not intermittent. In this decade, it could be a large power plant. 2 decades on, it could be a large battery. But then Sri Lanka cannot wait until the battery research is ready, until the costs come down. So the situation in Sri Lanka is that our large power plant, the last one, commenced operation in 2014. Between 2014 and today, the electricity sales have grown by almost 30%, a 6-year increase. But are there any power plant being built? Any significant power plant being built? No. Any power plant in the bidding stage? No. How about importing gas? And we have been talking about 7 years. We still do not see concrete action to get gas into the country, which can provide the flexibility to support the renewables as well as to do away with the sickening 30% use of oil for electricity production. Of course, there are other good things happening. What you see on the left-hand side is a summary of the household electricity consumption. On the left-hand side, you see that the electricity consumption in the lower user blocks is reducing. You will see the gray bar and the yellow bar is getting lower. This analysis represents a particular month in that respective year. So therefore, people's electricity consumption is growing for household use, and they are moving away from the heavily subsidized consumption blocks. Did anybody ask them to do? No. That's the natural result of income growth. Sri Lanka is different. For 5 decades, the country banked on renewable energy for electricity generation. So what this graph shows is the amount of electrical energy that was sourced from renewable sources from 1970 to year 2020. You will see that we were almost 100% renewable. And you also see the deep valleys in 1974, 1983, 1987, 1992. These are all years of severe blackouts. So you rely on renewable energy. You say that you are 100% renewable energy system, and the seniors here will remember, if there is a drought in the month of November, December, January, blackouts are certain by February. And you see a major change happening from about 1995 through a major blackout in 1996 and further blackouts in 2000 and 2001, when our renewable share settled down at 40%. Sri Lanka here again is very honest. While many countries report their renewable share in megawatt terms, Sri Lanka is honestly reporting the figure in energy terms. But we could have satisfied ourselves by reporting the red line, which is capacity, and say that we are a 50% renewable system even today, when we are actually not so. Because capacity depends on how the designer of the renewable energy source optimized the equipment rating against the resource. It could be a hydropower plant, it could be a wind regime, or it could be a solar resource. So he would have studied it and decided that this is the capacity I am going to use for this power plant, so that my investment will have optimal benefits. But what really matters is the blue line, which is the contribution of energy from renewable sources. So, unlike most countries, Sri Lanka is reporting energy for renewables. Sri Lanka's renewable energy development for electricity generation was not ad hoc. In fact, I read in the papers, someone has said that it was ad hoc. It was not ad hoc. 100% focus until 1990, and thereafter, with the government policy decision to open investment for the private sector, a systematic development of renewable energy through private investments. 1996, a policy decision. Year 2007, a revision to the policy, which enabled different types of renewable energy power plants to come into the system. And in 2008, rooftop solar PV policy decision, and 2016, enhancement of the rooftop solar PV policies, and 2016 again, competitive bidding for renewable energy projects. So we have come the full circle, but something is lacking. 2014 was the last thermal power plant built, and the planned power generation plants between 15 to 20 were effectively replaced with diesel power plants, and 2021, so far, no new power plants in sites. So diesel continues. Just to break the monotony, I am showing you some pictures of renewable energy power plants, a mini hydro. And renewable energy development has increased worldwide as well as in Sri Lanka. The 2010 wind power plants on the left-hand side, the transportation, the crude somewhat transportation of the wind blades on the left-hand side in 2010, and on the right-hand side, the modern way of transporting a wind blade for the CEB power plant in Mana. Foundations got bigger, machines got bigger. Now they are more than 3 megawatt per wind turbine. Of course, Sri Lankans are different. They want all the good things in the world, but in my view, do not want to pay for it. Let's see whether the numbers confirm that. So this shows one of the ways in which you can connect a rooftop solar PV into your local network. No need to go through the diagram in detail. You see a meter with a two-way arrow, and you can produce and sell at 22 rupees, and you will buy at rupees 270 to 45, the range depending on where you are, and the average is 1678 minus the cost of the distribution network, which is 372, because somebody has to pay for and maintain the distribution network. So therefore, the numbers don't seem to be right here. We'll look at more numbers as we go on. This is an extract from the publication of the Public Utilities Commission. I picked the most recent 6 years of information on the costs of electricity production and delivery in our country. So this information is available in the public domain, approved by the Public Utilities Commission. For convenience, I have divided each number by the amount of electricity sold, so that we can see the trends. We can see which number is more important than the other. See, the capacity cost of power generation has gone up from 277 to reach a maximum of 405, and in 2019, 3 rupees and 12 cents. Now, what is this capacity? This is, of course, the cost of maintaining the power plants, both by the CEB and the private sector. And in the case of the private sector, the embedded profits or on their investment. And what are these power plants doing? These power plants on which there is a capacity cost are producing electricity on demand. They produce electricity on demand, including at times when the hydropower and other renewables are not available. So therefore, part of this capacity cost is actually to support the renewables. The energy cost, the next line, fuel and other payments, including the payments for renewable energy. So the 22 rupees you get for the solar rooftop is included and averaged in this number, which was 1029 and has increased to 1392. I marked it in red. It's too high compared with other countries. Convert it to dollars or Indian rupees or whatever, it's high. Transmission, I did not use my red pen. But distribution, I have to use my red pen. It has gone up to 372, which is more than 2 US cents. Whereas internationally, the figure we see is in the range of 1.2 US cents. So 1.2 US cents is about 2 rupees 20 cents, that range. So there are two cost elements which requires very significant attention. We know that the attention is there, but nothing much is happening. We know the people are concerned, but action is lacking. Of course, costs and prices can be interpreted in different ways. This is one way of interpreting it professionally. I would say this is the correct professional way. So the numbers in blue are the costs, and the numbers in red are the prices. As of 2019, approved by the Public Utilities Commission. Both numbers have been reviewed and approved by the Commission. So, large customers, they cost 1785 to supply and they pay 1505. And medium customers 1897 and they pay 1828. So we go on, households 29 rupees to supply and 16 rupees income. So a business like this cannot survive, isn't it? It should have closed down a long time ago. This business should have been closed down a long time ago. But it's going on. So I looked at the numbers in another way, by finding out who are the subsidy receivers and who are the subsidy givers, meaning who are the free riders. In fact, I found only a small group of people who are contributing to the till so that the free riders can have a certain amount of electricity at the price they desire. So, what I have marked in yellow, I will not go through in detail, are the people who pay above what it costs, whereas everybody else pays below what it costs. I looked at it another way. If we are too lazy to calculate, let us work on average costs. Once again, these numbers have been reviewed and approved by the Public Utilities Commission, who are reviewing the costs as well as the prices. So on the left hand side is the large hydropower plants. Remember the ones we were managing with until 1990? Those. Some of them have significantly depreciated. They have an operating cost. Then that electricity has to be transmitted and distributed. So I evenly applied the transmission and distribution costs to all the different technologies. And then the coal-fired, one and only coal-fired power plant. I looked at the approved costs. Then the oil-fired power plants. You see the bar is hitting the roof. It costs almost 36 rupees to produce and bring a kilowatt hour of electricity to your doorstep from an oil burning power plant. And how about the other renewables that you and I like very much? But they also cost quite a lot to produce and deliver to your doorstep. That is, buy from a wind power plant, buy from a mini hydro and bring it to your doorstep, it costs 25 rupees. Let us all go home and look at our electricity bill and see whether we are paying 25 rupees. We like renewable energy, don't we? And on the right hand side is the average. Now on the horizontal line is the approved average price. Remember I said we'll work in average prices? So, again, hydropower comes below the price, coal power comes slightly above the price, and oil and renewables come significantly above the price. So what is important is to understand this and then examine ways on how to balance this. I also examined what other countries charge for electricity. It's a very crowded diagram, but what we see here is that the often repeated slogan that Sri Lanka is the country with the highest price of electricity is wrong. If you say that Sri Lanka is a country with a high cost of electricity, production cost and delivery cost, I can agree to a large extent. But Sri Lanka is not the country with the so-called highest price of electricity. You know, in our society we have certain slogans that are embedded, which are repeated at every cocktail party and at every funeral and wedding. What is the first one? Sri Lanka was to export electricity to India. And the second one is that Sri Lanka is the country with the highest price of electricity. Both are wrong and they were never true. Let me move on. The end result. We have had 10 years after the Electricity Act, which was brought in, debated in Parliament for years and years, and approved in 2009, hoping that it will completely rejuvenate the electricity industry, make the treasury free from the burden of running the electricity industry. Sadly, it did not happen. And once again, this is a summary of the costs and the prices approved by the Public Utilities Commission. I wish that the new commission who started working probably today look at these numbers. So 10 years of electricity industry regulation has landed us in a loss of 365 billion rupees. 365 billion rupees is the loss of the electricity industry over 10 years of Public Utilities Commission oversight. So there is something seriously wrong, and this has to be corrected, not only in one institution, across all institutions. The Renewable Energy Development Strategy, I briefly summarized it earlier, and a further summary is shown here. And Sri Lanka offers very generous feed-in tariffs. So these are the numbers that relate to the feed-in tariffs. That is, if you produce electricity from a renewable energy source, you are paid this amount of money. And policy revisions frequently. And net metering, where customers are allowed to be producers and customers. And different mechanisms, 3 of them. A customer can be a micropower producer. So Sri Lanka is different. Sri Lanka has a region, in my view, most investor-friendly renewable energy development procedures. In spite of all the weaknesses and all the shortcomings you hear, in my view, we have the region's most investor-friendly renewable energy development procedures. There are shortcomings, both technical and commercial. But we seem to be ignoring the calls to resolve technical issues. And then later, as it has happened before, hit hard on both commercial and technical problems at once. Let me explain. So these activities are going on, and in my view, we are not adequately addressing the technical aspects of renewable energy integration to the system. Earlier, I said that we are not adequately addressing the commercial aspects. Renewable energy, we say, that is cheaper and cheaper by the day, is coming to your electricity meter significantly at a higher price than you pay for your electricity. Now the technical aspects. This is the actual plot of electricity production on the left-hand side and the voltage on the right-hand side, taken from an inverter in 2017, not this year, several years ago, when the rooftop solar PV program was just picking up. See the voltage on the right-hand side. The line has reached 255 volts for most of the day. My professors ask, what is the nominal voltage of Sri Lanka? 230, not 240, 230. What is the tolerance you allow? Plus 6%, minus 6%. Of course, there are calls to increase it to plus 10 and minus 10, but that's a different matter. But as you see, plus 10, plus 6% is only 243. And several years ago, this solar PV system may still be there. It is stressing the system every day for several hours at 255 volt. I have dozens of diagrams like this. So it is not a random occurrence. It's a frequent occurrence. So we can let it remain for this customer to stress his equipment as well as his neighbor's equipment, because they are on the same phase, and this will go on and on. So luckily, possibly, I'm not sure whether LECO and CB are getting complaints, but we need to resolve this. As I always say, as the professors would have always said, all engineering problems have an engineering solution. But it may cost. So we have to examine what are the optimal solutions. Another network which was measured in 2018, it's a LECO network, an extensive measurement. And in the next slide, you will see the curves, the bundle of curves on the right-hand side, and the black line horizontally, which shows the voltage violations. In fact, those violations were not as bad as in this one. So voltage violations are happening. It's there. So what do we engineers do? We ask the customers to go away, take your solar panel and go away. No. In my view, no. We have a commercial problem to be resolved. It's a cost and the price problem, and we have a technical problem to resolve. And these two problems should not be brushed aside, but they should be handled. And the performance of a larger solar PV system, this curve shows how large variations can happen. And this shows what the seasonal variations are of a wind power plant, the seasonality. Now I come to the last leg of my presentation. I've been allocated 50 minutes. With all this information I have shared with you, and the information that I have not shared with you, because there are a lot of topics that we can talk about, what I have to say to the government and the Ministry of Power, who are the policy makers according to the Electricity Act. So legally, the role of the government is to make policy. And in fact, the Act says how the policy should be made. So a politician saying something from a stage is not government policy. It can be included in whatever document, it is not government policy. The Electricity Act says how the government policy should be established. Who should do it, who should draft it, who should approve it. The second point I want to emphasize for the attention of the government is to remember that all power plants have to work as a part of a system. Decisions on anything, even policy, cannot be made in isolation because it is part of a system. System engineering or power system engineering is a subject that requires deep analysis. It requires decisions to be expedited on major power plants cancelled in 2015 and the gas terminal pending since 2014. no visible action yet. Of course, we know actions are being taken, but no visible action yet. So it is 7 years since the last power plant started producing electricity. Across the Pork Straits, there are 3 major power plants and 1 nuclear power plant under construction, and thousands of megawatt of renewable energy under construction. Do not go down in the history as yet another government that could not build a single power plant in its term. We have had governments like that in the past. Not a single power plant of any significance. Of course, smaller seasonal power plants are good for publicity, but these are seasonal. These are not reliable, and invariably these are renewable. They are good, but that will not serve the requirements of the system to drive the economy into the next era. To our utilities, CEB and LECO, who are the operator of the electrical system, there has to be a focus on improving technical quality and commercial quality. Technical quality, I am sure you understand. Some of it we discussed, the quality, the voltage, the stability, the reliability. But what is commercial quality? How well are you treated? How long does it take for response to your complaint? Do you really have to visit an office to get an electricity connection? There's a story that I always say. 5 years ago in Bombay, not in Europe, in Bombay, a customer does not have to visit any office to get a new electricity connection. Everything happens on the phone, not a smartphone, ordinary phone, text messages. He only has to go to an internet cafe and fill up the form, that's it. Everything else, the message to him to be ready because visit is pending, and his cost estimate, and confirmation that his payment has been received, and a message that the connection will be given on such and such a date, please stay at home, and finally communicating to him his new electricity account number. I think we are almost there. This is one example of good commercial quality. Of course, CEB needs to urgently reduce the cost of distribution. 2019 it was 372. We know it's an open secret that there is overstaffing. We know the management can do very little about it, but then there has to be a conscious series of actions to bring the distribution costs down. It is easy for us to say, it is easy for others to say, but then working in a political environment like ours, we know it is difficult. But then it's important to remember that our figure is 372 and the internationally accepted figure is about 240. So I do not know how many people you will have to sack to get there, but there may be other mechanisms to make sure that costs are brought down gradually. And to the need to establish targets for technical and commercial losses, I propose 7% by 2025 national, which includes LECO losses as well. And more accurate calculation on reliability and working towards improvement of reliability, which includes distribution automation as well. But once again, reliability has a price. To the Public Utilities Commission, what can they do? Because as you saw, the situation is not good. Although the lights are on, you see the numbers behind it indicate a very sad story. So I would suggest that the Public Utilities Commission actually read the Electricity Act It is very clear. In fact, the writers of the Act have gone into a lot of detail as to what the Commission's role and the obligations and limitations are. For example, there is a clause that says the cost and the price should be equal. Very simple. The cost and the price should be equal. The Commission, the Act says, of course, the Commission can ask the government, hello government, do you plan to give any subsidies to any customers? Then the government says, yes, we plan to subsidize low user households. Then the Commission does the calculation and sends the estimate to the government. And like it happens in many Indian states, the government actually sends a check. The government sends a check saying that this is my subsidy component to subsidize low user households. Beyond that, cost equals price. Price equals cost. And the Commission needs to study how similar commissions in the region and beyond behave and regulate the utility industry. And their professionalism, the quality of commissioners and the staff, and the respect they command from the stakeholders. This is extremely important because a regulatory commission is almost conducting a judicial function. So it's a very responsible function. And to re-establish the regulatory procedures and implement the unfinished regulatory reforms. There are a large number of regulatory reforms that are yet to be implemented, almost 11 years after the 2009 Electricity Act. And to electricity customers, ask for your rights to have a reliable electricity supply at a competitive price. And of course, know your obligations as a customer. And remember, there is nothing free. Somebody has to pay for it. Either you may pay it through your electricity bill, or you may pay it as a part of your taxes. If it is the bill, it is visible to you, and your taxes you do not know. It is embedded in anything and everything you buy out there in the market. But of course, my personal preference is the cost to be shown in the bill and not to be charged on you, unknown to you, as taxes when you purchase other things. For example, the government can say, this difference in costs and price, we will load it onto telephone bills. So every time you make a call, you pay for the call and pay a portion of your electricity bill. But you do not know. That would not allow you to question the costs. And to the Institution of Engineers. The greatest honor to Professor R.H. Paul will be to carry on his commitment to the profession of engineering. I call upon the Institution of Engineers to intervene in major decisions to change the dangerous course being taken by the electricity industry. And there have been similar interventions before. The big power plants that have been debated for decades were expedited because IESL took a stand. I'm talking about year 2001, 2, 3 perhaps. And always for the betterment of the industry to uphold engineering and commercial principles. So there is room, IESL has all the right to intervene. Not hold placards and go round, but professionally intervene to make corrections to the regulatory functions, to the cost functions, the function or the activities that are increasing the cost of electricity, and to resolve the technical issues. So Sri Lanka will be similar and we always be different. If we were like Singapore, which some of you want to be, electricity price will be 25 rupees. Sri Lanka 270 upwards. All right? So we are different to Singapore. If we want to be like Bangladesh, no rooftop solar, no buyback price. Only 2% of the total electricity production is renewable. Sri Lanka is around 40%. There are many renewable projects in the planning stage, of course. 2 gas terminals are in operation. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh both decided around the same time to import gas. And for Bangladesh, it would have been a very difficult psychological decision. Bangladesh is a gas producer. So for them, it would have been as difficult as Sri Lanka deciding to import tea. Imagine Sri Lanka has to decide to import tea. It's a very difficult decision, isn't it? But Bangladesh decided to import gas. Decision 2015, 2 terminals are operating already. Sri Lanka decision 2014, not even a bid yet. Still talking about it. Not only gas power plants, 2 major coal-fired power plants in operation, are under construction in Bangladesh. So Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are different. Indonesia, no rooftop solar PV buyback. No plans for major renewables. Of course, there are a few here and there. Major coal power plants being built. And closer to home, Tamil Nadu. Major power plants, both fossil fuel and renewables, and 1 stage 2 of nuclear power plant are all under construction. And Tamil Nadu, if you have visited, had load shedding for decades. Probably from 1960s, they had power cuts every day. And the last power cut was in 2017. Now Tamil Nadu is surplus. With a population of 3 times Sri Lanka, Tamil Nadu peak demand now is 8 times of Sri Lanka. So you can imagine the amount of economic activity going on there. Population is 3 times, electricity demand is 8 times. And now has a surplus capacity. So the greatest honor that we can bestow on Professor R.H. Paul is not to lose sight on institutions, not to lose sight on the need for good technical analysis, however difficult it would be. Every man on the street thinks that he has a solution to the energy problem. But we need to realize that there has to be analysis, there has to be calculations, and there has to be technical viability as well as commercial viability. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I end my memorial oration on the occasion of the anniversary of Professor R.H. Paul's death anniversary. And I thank you very much for inviting me to make this oration, and also wish you all the professional strength to work towards the betterment of the electricity industry and the population at large, who are expecting us to do that day in and day out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siyambalapitiya, for your informative and highly resourceful memorial oration. Hope the issues highlighted by you can be resolved by engineers, by ourselves. The chairman CB was here, and GM CB is also here. Our future GM is here, and all the senior engineers, electrical engineers are there. So we may be able to resolve all these issues, especially the commercial quality of our our electricity supply, at least is in our hand. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Siyambalapitiya. And now I cordially invite President to give away the memento to our speaker, Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya. Thank you, Mr. President. And there is another token of appreciation for our guest speaker. I invite Engineer Ranatunga, the Sectional Committee Chairman, to give it away to our speaker. Thank you very much. To end the session, it is the time to give away the vote of thanks. For this, I invite Engineer M.R. Ranatunga, the Chairman of Electrical, Electronic and Telecommunication Engineering Sectional Committee. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Executive Secretary, giving me the opportunity for delivering the vote of thanks. In fact, I appreciate and I pay my gratitude to all the participants. It's more than 500 online via Zoom, and I think similar number through Pure TV in channel 20, that's Event TV, and also from the YouTube and the Facebook. I thank you very much for all the participants who spend the time with us from starting to now on. I appreciate Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya. In fact, I booked him, I think, more than 1 month or 2 months before. He accepted, but he said, I just want to check whether I have delivered this lecture before. Therefore, you can imagine how many lectures he has delivered to this kind of forum. Therefore, he want to recheck whether I have delivered the similar lecture for the RH Paula. Therefore, fortunate for me, he said, yes, not done in the recent past. In fact, he spelled out the term sheet for the electrical industries. I think the past GMs are here, the electricity board past executives are here, and the chairman CB was here, and he said he want to go for some emergency work, and GM CB is here, and I think 6 key decision makers are here in this audience, including present GM and future to be GMs as here. Therefore, it's a good eye-opener, even though you spoke so mildly, right? But the content was so heavy. It's like maybe like uranium, so heavy. Therefore, this term, and there are some developers also in this audience, and also there are future engineers in the Zoom audience as well. Therefore, it's a big task for us to continue the way the customers want. Therefore, thank you very much, Doctor, once again. You have gone through a lot of research, studies, collected a lot of details. Collecting details is easy, but analyzing and giving it in the correct form to impact the industry and the country, that's the most hardest part. Therefore, thank you once again for your valuable time, and also I know you may have spent more than 20-30 hours to prepare this lecture. The delivering is easy, it's only 1.5 hours or 1 hour. Thank you very much once again, honoring us by delivering this presentation, the oration, in fact physically in the hybrid version. Therefore, you took all the challenges. Thank you once again, and I appreciate as a true son of Professor R.H. Paul. Thank you once again. Please give him a very good round of applause. Thank you very much, President KPIU Dharampala, for gracing this occasion. I think we have invited descendant of Professor R.H. Paul, Mrs. S. Appature, sitting over there, and also Mr. AADIE Appature. Thank you very much, sir and madam, for being with us and gracing this occasion. It's a great honor. And even this COVID situation, you took the challenge to come over here physically and witness this occasion. We appreciate your presence. Thank you very much, sir and madam. I thank Executive Secretary Ninda Abhisekara. We had several pre-session and discussion to have the way we must have this presentation, whether it's a hybrid nature, solely in the Zoom and so on. Therefore, he gave us fullest support, he himself and the executive staff of the Secretariat of the IESL. I appreciate their contribution. I appreciate special invitees who are with us, Engineer Vijit Herat, Chairman CB, he just left, and Engineer Komuduni Herat, GMCB, and all the past president of the IESL, and also my colleagues, additional general managers of the CB. And also I appreciate the presence of executive committee members and also the hard work done by our committee members. And also I must congratulate our main sponsor. I think you have reached, the email version went to 20,000 engineers and more than 1,500 executives in the CEB. In the Zoom platform, I don't know how many, maybe thousands, and they will be reread and revisit these sites many times. Therefore, the investment you have done is not in vain. Thank you very much, and for being with us physically in this occasion, thank you very much once again. The direct board members, Mr. Algama, Mr. Vijit and Mr. Janaka is with us right now in this audience from the Divan. My thanks goes to media event TV team, Engineer Prasanga and his team from the PO TV and Event TV Channel 20. I think our colleagues had many correspondence and you have done a very good job. Thank you very much once again. And if you do, and if the response is very high, therefore you will get more opportunities in IESL in future. This is the first such occasion for you to perform, and we will see and we will like to do business with you in future as well. Thank you very much. My special thanks goes to Engineer Tarandu Kankanamge, one of our engineers, and also he is the Sectional Committee Chairman of the JIY, and he worked very closely and organizing all these events, coordinating all these events, because I was mostly busy and I had a very little time to organize all these things, and he and his team and done a wonderful job from I think many days he spent, including a nice presentation done by prepared for the RH poll, and all the slides and the computer works, and also organizing the entire event and coordinating this event. Thank you, Tarindu. And also I like to thank my secretary, Engineer Basura, and his team in my sectional committee, and all the members of the electrical, electronic and telecommunication sectional committee members of my team. And also all the participants and all the invitees, and also the members who I haven't not mentioned here. I thank all the participants, and I can see especially 4 ladies, 4 brave ladies are with us today, even with COVID situation. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us today in physically. And thank you very much once again, and I wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much.